the point of AI is really more about automation and trying to make things easier for you. It doesn't replace your thinking, and that's a concept that I feel that is misunderstood. And AI is very iterative. It doesn't, like, if you solve a problem using AI, it doesn't mean you're done. That's just the beginning, because it's an iterative process where things change over time and you have to adapt and evolve your model or your solution with them. And just explaining that AI is an iterative cycle, that was one of the things that I feel people misunderstand. And I just wanted to correct that. So in other words, AI isn't replacing human judgment.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the latest impact of AI Explored. On this episode, we have Sairam Sundaresan. Sairam, how are you doing?
I'm doing lovely. Thank you. How are you?
Great. So it's great to have you here. So just to kind of get us started, what are you kind of working on at the moment within AI?
By day, I'm working with a very brilliant team of engineers who are trying to teach cars to drive and park safely by themselves. So autonomous driving and parking. And
your favorite subject, James.
And and by night, I'm trying to help people understand AI, because I read in a McKinsey report that there's like almost 80% of companies that have AI somewhere in their workflow, but there's a huge chunk of people who still don't know what it means for them, how these models behave, or what to actually do or evaluate them. So I'm trying to bridge that gap.
Okay, I can't avoid this. I have to ask, because
Sure.
when it comes to self-driving cars, I just am so cynical about it.
Okay.
I've seen most of the videos. Why do you think, here's the question essentially, why has it taken so long to get to a stage where we can actually trust self-driving cars? Is it because humans are so unpredictable in what they do in cars?
So before I answer that, let me just preface it with saying that these opinions and this answer is my own and does not represent that of my employer. To answer your question, yes, there is a bit of unpredictability when humans drive. I mean, you should probably see how people drive across the world. I mean, how people drive in one country varies significantly from how they drive in others. I'm not talking about which side of the road. I'm actually talking about the behaviors and
The driving
mannerisms.
style.
Exactly. Yeah. Right. So now, if you are trying to put something that is learning the rules of the road, trying to understand its surroundings and obstacles, it's going to try to learn patterns that occur, and you can't learn a pattern that occurs very rarely unless you have a lot of data, and that's one of the reasons why. And the second reason is just it's an insanely hard problem, to be honest, because you can, even as humans, right, if you're driving in severe fog or if you're driving in very harsh rain, it's very difficult for us to see what's in front of us. Now imagine a machine that has all these sensors. Even so, it has to assimilate what these sensors are saying, consolidate the information, and then be able to make an educated guess on what decision to take. And that this decision is a very high stakes decision. So there's safety involved and regulations involved. And it's important that it's then what happens? Should it fall back to the human? How much time should it give the human to react? So there's like so many questions that are all connected. So the long answer is it's a hard problem that needs a lot of time and care to be considered and solved properly.
Okay, no, that makes sense. And as I said, I keep hearing about all these different applications of self-driving, and certain companies have talked about it for years, and yet it still doesn't work, and it has caused, there's been a lot of issues with it. So it's interesting
Right.
to hear the way you break it down, and essentially it is related to human behavior, and that's why it is so complicated, and because machines can't emulate human behavior and the complete irrationality of what people do on roads on a daily basis.
The thing that I always say is, machines like familiarity and patterns. We love ambiguity. and
Mhm.
there's a disconnect right there between machines and us.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, it's a really complex problem
Hmm.
because of human nature, essentially.
And a bunch
Yeah,
of other
Great.
which
things. Yeah,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
which should be solved if we all let the computer drive.
maybe, because there is still a lot of variables in play, like
Yeah.
the car working reliably, weather conditions, so many external factors that you can't really control, even if there are no humans in the loop. So
Mhm.
basically, yes, the answer is maybe. But I would really say, just if you look at the last few years, see how far we've come from the starting point of autonomous driving or parking, whatever it was. We've come a very long way, and
Yeah.
to be honest, it's still a long journey ahead, and one that is going to be very interesting from both an engineering and a societal point of view.
Yeah, I'm going to San Francisco in November, and I intend to try out a Waymo cab just to see what the experience is like. And I'm going to record it and everything, put it out on LinkedIn because
Oh,
I think it's fascinating
please
to
tag me.
see. Yeah. So you mentioned that. So one of the things and one of the reasons we wanted to have you on is because you've been writing a book all about AI. So we wanted to
Mhm.
get into that a bit. So the book is called AI for the Rest of Us.
Yep.
I just wanted to understand, why did you decide to write a book? And also, it's an illustrated book as
Hmm.
well. So
Yep.
if you can just kind of explain the background and what inspired you to kind of want to write a book and an illustrated book at that as well.
Sure. So generally, AI books are in one of two categories. I'm not talking about the books that talk about how AI is being implemented in some companies, or like the implications of AI. That's a third category of a book. But I'm talking
Mhm.
about the ones that teach you AI. They fall into two broad categories. Either they're very code heavy, meaning that every concept is explained through code. So if you're an engineer who understands code, brilliant. It's a great way to learn, and you internalize it immediately. And the other side is a very mathematically rigorous approach where you talk in derivations and equations, and that's another beautiful way to learn it. But then that's for another type of audience. But then there's like this whole messy middle where people don't come from either background, right?
That would
And
be me.
glad to hear. So I have one person who will definitely read the book.
Definitely.
But and that messy middle is underserved. And the books that are trying to serve it are maybe like dumbing the ideas down so much that you can't act upon what you learn. You can't take decisions based on it. You have no way of tying what you learn to your actual day to day. And that's the market I wanted to serve, because I was in that position many years ago, and I wanted to do something for myself from back then. So that's why the book was born, and I basically wanted to use plain English to explain these ideas, so not a single equation, no code. And I don't have anything against either of those. I love both, but I wanted to do it in very simple language. Now, coming to the illustrations, AI is a very, I feel like at least for me, it's a very spatial subject. So if you think about, if I were to tell you embeddings, and now embeddings, everybody talks about it. I mean, because they like, that's how these models store information and blah, blah, blah. But if I told you like two embeddings are close together and you have never ever heard about embeddings before, you'd be like, what the heck does that mean? Right. So
I'm already, what the heck are
okay.
embeddings?
Now, if I instead told you, imagine a graph, that you take a piece of graph paper and you draw a two-dimensional graph and just visualize points on it, and think each point on the graph is an embedding. And then if I tell you two embeddings are close, you would immediately think, oh, these 2 points are close. So these two embeddings are close. And if I visually show you that, are you more likely to remember the concept or less likely to remember the concept?
Oh, more likely.
And that's why the book is
Ah,
illustrated.
okay, right. So okay. So essentially, the book is not dumbing it down so you lose the value of what you're trying to define, but just to be able to visualize it so people actually remember it better.
Right. And the other thing that visuals do is it's like a pattern break, right? I mean, if you're reading a wall of text, suddenly after a point, especially in a dense subject, your eyes can start glazing over if you're not really committed.
Mhm.
So if you have a visual that's, approachable and it helps you crystallize what you're learning, then all of a sudden you just have sort of a break from the monotony of text. The other final reason that I illustrated it is because AI often comes across as very intimidating or something that people are scared about. And if I instead have doodles that explain these ideas to you, it psychologically, at least for me, I feel that it reduces some of that intimidation. So I'll stop there.
Yeah, okay.
No, no, no,
You
no.
make it more friendly. Yeah, but I can imagine that creating the text and the images from a very complex subject might have taken you a long time to craft everything so that it's still helpful in your decision making process
Mhm.
without being incredibly complex.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think the challenge was what to include, what not to include, first of all,
Yeah,
because AI changes so fast. And it's already changed by the time from when I submitted the draft to the publisher to what's happened. So my focus was to keep the emphasis on fundamentals, the things that stay consistent over time, and at the same time try to cover the more recent he says about something
okay.
that came 2 years ago.
Yeah.
um, uh, like for example ChatGPT, like how does it work behind the scenes, or like these models that generate images when we prompt them, how do they work behind the scenes, or things that have been around for ages that we take for granted, like how does a company recommend what you should buy or what song comes next in your playlist. So all of these have AI baked into them, and I wanted to sort of talk about how that works. And that was the focus, so that allowed me to stay focused on what would really add value, and addressing this your point about trying to not go into the weeds too much. And the illustrations were the hard part, to be honest, but I learn visually, so for me, just trying to figure out how can I go explain a concept and how many visuals to include, all of that was actually freeing in a sense. So that's
Did you
yeah,
work with an illustrator
I
or
drew
how
them.
did? Sorry, you did them yourself.
Yeah.
Oh, very good.
Yeah,
Okay, okay.
I'm not any Picasso type person, so I don't want to get your hopes up. But I doodle a lot, and I find that doodles are easy and approachable for most people to understand.
Exactly, and non-threatening. So that's a good call. Yeah.
In in terms of the book,
Ooh.
what is there any idea within AI that you think people really misunderstand that you clarify?
um, I I feel like the biggest misunderstanding is like people just assume that AI will work. It's like it's perfection and it's going to give you the perfect answer. The point of AI is really more about automation and trying to make things easier for you. It doesn't replace your thinking, and that's the concept that I feel that is misunderstood. And AI is very iterative. It doesn't, like, if you solve a problem using AI, it doesn't mean you're done. That's just the beginning, because it's an iterative process where things change over time and you have to adapt and evolve your model or your solution with them. And just explaining that AI is an iterative cycle, that was one of the things that I feel people misunderstand. And I just wanted to correct that. So in other words, AI isn't replacing human judgment, it's augmenting human judgment.
Why here's a question I have. Why does AI, if you ask it a question and then ask it the same question, it gives you two different outcomes?
Okay. So first of all, to clarify, the AI that we seem to be interacting with a lot using these prompts are a class of models called language models behind the scenes. And these language models are probabilistic. And that's a very fancy way of saying they take a educated guess of what comes next in a sequence. And so if you give it a sentence, or like saying, which coffee shop should I go to? It can either say, it can actually give you the name of a coffee shop, like say Starbucks, for example, or it can say, okay, it can fill it up with tomorrow because that's a equally likely word. right? Which coffee shop should I go to tomorrow? And then if you think about, there are like many options. Now, without the context that you have in your head, you're saying, you are asking the question with some intent, and without you giving it that kind of intent, and without you making sure that every other random factor is sort of accounted for, you're not going to get deterministic answers. I mean, it's a feature of these language models, it's not a bug. And so therefore that's, the core reason why you get different answers every time you prompt
Mm.
these models.
So
And
in basics, it's the same problem as with cars, because you can't get all variables sorted out. You can't make it 100% the same.
okay. So one of the things I've been wondering about is I keep hearing about this term RAG and its importance with AI. So
Mhm.
first of all, can you tell us what it is? And then secondly, if you can explain the importance of it when it comes to these models?
Okay, so RAG stands for Retrieval Augmented Generation, and that's one thing I just want to caveat is that in the AI field we love acronyms, and a lot of our acronyms are actually either named after the Transformer robots or Sesame Street, but RAG is one of the exceptions. And so what RAG allows these models to do is it allows them to access a knowledge bank that is relevant to the types of questions the model is likely to encounter from the user. So let's take an example, right? You have, say, a customer support chatbot, and if you are asking it about the refund policy, um, chances are your non-AI pre-baked chatbot might actually just give you like stale answers. It might just tell you there is no refund policy, or sorry, I can't help you with that. Whereas with or it might hallucinate a refund policy that doesn't exist, and you don't want that as a business owner, right? Oh, we'll give you a refund and an extra pair of shoes
Yeah.
because you are not happy with the ones you have. You don't want that to happen. So now imagine what RAG does is it allows this model to first retrieve relevant information from this knowledge bank. So that's the retrieval part of RAG. It then augments your prompt with this retrieved information. So it says, here's some context about what the user is likely to expect from you. So use this information when you create a response. And then that is the augmented part of RAG. And then the generation part is what these language models do, which is like if you've asked a question, it's going to try to complete what happens next. But now it's got this extra context. Like I told you in the previous thing, like I want to have coffee, or where should I have coffee tomorrow? Or the answer could be Starbucks. But if the retrieved knowledge is basically giving you a list of coffee shops, it's going to give you an answer that is grounded in that information. And that's why RAG is so important. So especially you can think of a number of use cases, right? If you have a company and you have internal docs that um, you want your employees to access and get quick answers from, RAG is very helpful, because if they chat with this model, it will retrieve from the knowledge bank and then give you grounded answers. And the other reason RAG is very important is because information changes all the time, and therefore for you to be able to um, get the most up-to-date information and responses from these models, you need to rely on a external source. Now, before I continue, like I've been rambling on, so I just want to stop if there are any questions, but I do have one more point to make about why RAG is important.
No.
Bring it
It's
on.
really good.
Yeah.
Okay,
I
so
just wondered. I have one question. You were talking there about RAG. So is that similar to the context where if I build in ChatGPT a GPT and then I give it files for context, is that yeah? Okay, yeah,
it's similar, yeah. So,
yeah.
and the point I wanted to make, the final point I want to make about why RAG is important, is the alternate to RAG is something called fine tuning, which means that every now and then you take this model that you have, the language model behind your chatbot, and you fine tune it on your internal data, right? And that sounds like a very reasonable approach until you figure out how much of computation it needs, how much time it needs, and then when you realize that the moment you fine tuned it, it's already out of date because information keeps changing. So fine tuning is expensive. And there is a time and place for fine tuning. But if your information is changing very dynamically and very frequently, RAG is a lifesaver, because now the same model that you have, without any additional fine tuning, can just retrieve information from the knowledge banks. All you need to do is update the knowledge bank versus actually having to fine tune the entire model. So that's the trade-offs that exist, and that's where RAG is also very important.
Okay. So you mentioned there groundedness. Can you
Mhm.
kind of explain in a bit more detail that what that is?
So groundedness is when an AI answers something, and that answer is supported by evidence. Now, you all would have experienced situations when you asked the model something and it gave an answer that sounded right, but and it sounded very confidently right. But when you poke some
What was a
holes
blatant
into the
lie?
answer, it was a blatant lie. Like, for example, it might give you a book that is by real people who exist in the world, but they've never written a book like that in their lives. Or or this happens with research papers all the time, by the way.
Yeah,
um,
I used it one time. I was doing it. So I work in product marketing for a
hmm.
software company, and I was looking at it, and I was asking it a question about the roadmap, and it just completed a new roadmap which had features we have not even developed on it. And I was like,
were,
okay.
any, were any of them useful?
Oh, good
That's a good
question.
question. No, no, some of them are just like a bit far out there,
Okay.
and but it, some of them were, yeah, some of them I did look at and go, well, potentially. So
Yeah, so that's where groundedness comes in, which is like these models, as I mentioned earlier, hallucinate. They make things up, and they sound very confident when they're making things up. So it's up to us to fact check and verify that the information that they're giving you is actually correct. And groundedness is a measure of how much the information they provide you is supported by actual evidence versus made up nonsense. And there are different ways to measure groundedness. For example, you could compare the response, like for example, if you relied on something like Wikipedia, where again Wikipedia is editable and there are people who make changes to it. But that being said, let's, for the sake of this example, assume Wikipedia is a reliable source. If you retrieve the answer to a question from Wikipedia, and then you use one of these models to answer the same question, you could compare the overlap between the retrieved answer and the generated answer the model gives you. And then there's like citation accuracy, like how many like the sources that it cites. There's like, we could get in the weeds of that, but basically groundedness is like, for you, you can think of it as a way that, how much of this AI's answer is actually supported by evidence and how much of it is nonsense.
okay, that's good. Yeah. So okay, so that's with the models. So the next thing and the big thing that we're seeing is AI agents.
Hmm.
Now, we have had previous guests and we've talked about how the vast majority of AI agents out there are simply automations. They're not true agents but if we think about maybe if you can define what a true AI agent is. So, because I think there is some, as I said, a lot of things are said AI agents, but they're not. They're not
Buzzword
autonomous, which
bingo.
I think is the defining feature for a true AI agent.
So the AI agent is basically, you can think of it as a program or an algorithm that can plan and execute steps on its own, without needing as much human intervention. So if you think about how a traditional language model works, you prompt it, you get a response, you prompt it, you get a response. But now imagine that all of a sudden you needed to book tickets for you. For a trip you're taking. Now, a language model will make up the airlines, it will make up the price of the ticket, and a whole bunch of other things. Now, imagine you empowered the same model with external tools, meaning suddenly you gave it access to the internet, you gave it access to, like your computer so that it can maybe access certain applications. You're giving it tools that are very good at doing a specific job, and then you are also giving it the ability to plan, so it can actually reason out, okay, so the user has asked me to book tickets, so first I need to go figure out where are they departing from and where they're going to land, and then I have to go find travel websites, so I need access to the internet, and then I need to do, and then goes through these steps, right, in the sequence. And then once it has a plan, it then has to execute, and then for execution it needs tools, and then it can look at all the options that are available to it, and then the tools do the work, sub problems, and then they give the response back to this model, and then it sort of packages everything together and comes back to you. And that is way more useful than a hallucinating language model. So
True. And sorry, James, go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
No, do you see a lot of this stuff being built within your because if I look, I work in IT, and we do a lot of engagements. Most of them are AI agents, which means business process automation,
right
in the broader sense.
right
Perhaps even a little bit of interpretation with an LLM to interpret information and to give it on. But the true agentic, I'll give my piece of process completely to an AI, is something that we don't see that much.
It's far and few as far as I understand it, and this is just my opinion. I'm happy to see if there are actual applications out there that are truly agentic, but it's a hard problem once again, because if you think about planning, the agent could make up the wrong plan, and then all of a sudden it's executing something that you don't want it to. So then there needs to be oversight for the agent to make sure it's planning the right way, and and you can achieve the same result in multiple different ways, and each of those ways might, like, one of those ways might be the desired way, which is like cheap in cost or cheap, very fast in time. The number of variables are there, so then you need an agent that can actually think through these possibilities and choose the right option. And then so you need to verify the plan, and then once the plan is verified, then you have the execution phase, and then it's there's a lot of moving parts, and then the more complex the task you're expecting to be solved using this agentic flow, the harder it gets. So yeah,
and the more expensive.
In the scenario you've laid out there, you have to give your credit card details.
Yeah.
Your AI could go off and have a spending spree on
yeah, just imagine the next day you get like free delivery because you ordered, like, I don't know, 2 kilotons of milk. I don't know. That's even a correct, if even that's the correct metric for milk, but anyway.
Yeah. No. So I think what we're saying is pure agentic AI is quite a bit off yet.
People are working on it, to be very honest.
Yeah, people are working on it, but there's no real world implementations as far as we know.
There might be, and they might be in stealth,
yeah.
But they're not widespread. I think that's the
that's it. So I think that's a really good explanation, and it explains where we are with AI agents, because there is just so much hype around everything's an agent and practically nothing's an agent essentially at the moment.
See, agent is a very loose term, and see, AI is like this blanket term, and pretty much everything is being put under that blanket. In a similar way, I feel like agent is a very blanket term in its own right, and a lot of things are being put under it, even like simple automations.
Yeah, it's a hype word.
It is a hype word at the moment. Like, not to say what people are doing with agents isn't great, and there's some really good automation stuff going on, but if you want to go with the true definition, we ain't there yet, and we wouldn't want to be, because we've just laid out a scenario that the AI hallucinates, send you to the wrong place, wastes your money, and it's the trust is definitely not there yet for us to hand over our travel planning. Stick to what you're doing at the moment.
Trust but
not
verify.
that difficult. You open an app on your phone, you book your flight, you're done. So do you need to bring an AI into that? Now, I understand as time goes on, you could have it at a corporate level where instead of a travel agency, there's an AI and it does all the corporate thing. And then it kind of, makes sense. But as an individual, I don't need an AI agent to put what I need.
So
So,
I will caveat that and say that right now it's possible to do some of that with a human in the loop, meaning you approve or reject steps, and that I think is a good stopgap, and that actually allows you to still have that control. Like I said, AI doesn't replace judgment; it augments judgment. So basically, just having your oversight in that process can actually help you in a lot of times when you're in a pinch.
Yeah,
yeah.
and that brings me to a nice follow-up question, because a lot of things with AI can go wrong. Is there one AI fail that you encountered that you thought it was a failure, but it was a cool one?
So I think there was this. So coming back to autonomous vehicles, right? There was this video I remember seeing where um, a, a self-driving car was unable to see through some surface. Like it actually thought that um, you know like it had, so just to caveat it, the car was equipped only with cameras, and cameras uh, basically, at least the regular cameras that we see in our phones and everything, they have they flatten a 3D world into a 2D representation, so you lose the sense of depth, you lose perspective. And the AI wasn't able to learn that there was fog or some obstruction and just drove through an obstacle. And the thing that I secretly loved about it was that it doesn't matter how sophisticated your algorithm is, there always is a corner case that brings you down back to earth. And that particular vehicle was actually able to do a lot of things, like drive from point A to point B without anybody supervising, and it was incredible, and it was doing it in twilight, so very dark conditions, which are traditionally hard for cameras. But then you insert this new weather condition or this obstacle that it doesn't or hasn't seen yet or doesn't know how to reconcile. All of a sudden the same sophisticated algorithm just breaks. And for me, that was a failure that I secretly loved, because that tells you you have to be very precise with your data and planning.
Yeah, and it shows again that something that isn't dealt with frequently, the AI does not know what to do with. So that keeps us relevant for the
Right,
coming years.
right.
For driving. That's what James likes to drive himself.
Look, if it worked, there's use cases where I go, that would be fantastic. But all the evidence at the moment I've seen points to no, thank you. So,
Not yet.
Not yet.
yeah, not yet. But no, I'm not saying never. As I already said, I'm going to go and test one of these Waymo
Right.
things in when I'm in San Francisco. So yeah, like I am open to it. I can see it. I actually think about it in the context of my children. I have a 12-year-old and a 7-year-old, and I'm thinking, like, will they actually learn to drive? It,
Interesting.
yeah, yeah. So I kind of, yeah, because obviously, driving has got a lot more simplified. Most people don't drive stick anymore, which I think,
I missed that.
it,
Uh,
oh, you missed that. Okay, I
yeah.
didn't.
Okay.
I had to go through all of that. And there was a device called a clutch, which most cars don't have anymore. And that kind of, oh yeah. So anyway, all of that. So that's in that context, I kind of think of what's going to happen with self-driving cars. Will our children actually learn to drive, and will it all be automated? Like, so it is interesting to see. Where we're going to end up. But I think as we're saying, near term, it's not going to become mainstream as of yet.
Yeah, but again, the funny thing with AI is every time we seem to make a prediction, there's always like this quantum leap that happens, and then we're like, "Oh my God, what just happened?" Because just think about it, right? 3 years. I mean, AI has been around since the 1940s and 50s.
50s?
Yeah,
Yeah, 40.
and
Yeah,
and
yeah.
it's like the progress that we have made in the last 3 years feels monumental compared to, I don't know, decades and decades where the conditions weren't right.
Mm,
Th-
mm.
we always had the ability to do very innovative research and bring it into life, but the conditions weren't ripe. And then all of a sudden, in like the last 3 years, ChatGPT comes out, and then the next thing you know, everything's changed. And now we're taking it for granted. We're complaining that these models aren't good enough and they're not doing. So it's amazing how our expectations have changed, and
Oh
I
yeah,
wouldn't
no,
be surprised. I wouldn't be surprised if the next quantum leap came, and then maybe you and I,
yeah, yeah,
like sitting here saying, "What just happened?"
yeah. But if we think about it in the evolution of ChatGPT, like most of us, when GPT-5 came out, went, "Oh, what? This is not the quantum leap we all expected." It's we've and obviously there was the whole thing about people were so engaged with it, they were going, "I've lost a friend," because they didn't have any of the 4.0 models, which is a whole, like, we could do a
Mm,
whole episode on AI psychosis and how that affects people. That's a yeah, that's yeah, that's a topic for another episode, all in itself. But yeah, I understand. I do agree with what you're saying. Our expectation with them, I suppose, some things I feel like there has been progress, and then
mm.
some of it I look at and I go like, yeah, The-
That's
the-
fair. That's fair.
yeah, and I do think there is, and we're seeing it. The vast sums of money that are being invested and into infrastructure around it, and it is dominating. If you look at like the stock market, the entire thing is being held up by AI at the moment, which
Yeah.
is just terrifying to be honest. And it's a small collection of companies, and
Mm.
it's come from, as you said, like, Nvidia. They used to make GPUs for
Games.
for games. Yeah, exactly. That's what we knew them as. They're driving this entire thing.
Yeah.
OpenAI didn't exist. Anthropic didn't exist. Man, it was called Facebook. So we've had this evolution
Mm.
of and domination of a change of our world in, as you said, 3 years essentially. Like,
Yeah.
November 2022, most of us thought ChatGPT, what? Yeah, it was
Yeah.
like, now obviously you've been working in AI longer and have more background than most people, but I presume, suppose what I'm saying is mainstream AI
Mm.
exposure came in November 2022.
Yes, I think there's been, for those who have been in the field for a bit, I think the first major change in recent times was actually 2012, because that's when the first neural network actually was able to smash image recognition record, and obliterated the competition, to be honest. And then since then, image related tasks like recognizing objects, detecting objects, tracking them in the image, they've all like moved significantly further up. And then in 2017 was when this seminal paper, the Transformers, Attention is All You Need, that was a research paper that came out from Google and I think the University of Toronto, if I'm not mistaken. And since then, we had a few years where it was dormant. You still had like, I think like there was a language model that was used for improving search results. So not really what Perplexity does today, but something like, a very nascent version of AI assisted search. And then very like around 2022, that was unexpected. Like you had a model that suddenly seemed to feel like you were speaking with it, which was a very weird experience. And at the same time, for those who work in the field, it was a very crazy experience, because you know that these are pattern matching, you know that they're probabilistic, and yet it feels like they understand you, which doesn't make any sense. So yeah, long story short, yeah, just mainstream wise, yeah. But for those of us in the field, I think we saw this big shift happen in 2012.
And it when it comes to AI, is there a hidden cost that people never see coming?
Uh, yeah. So I think like there's a couple. The first one I will say is maintenance, because when you think of these models, you're never really done. As I said earlier on, I mentioned that if an AI project, like if you are a CFO, just think about it for a second, right? A team comes to you saying, I need X million dollars for trying out an idea. I don't know if it'll work. And now your brain is trying to rationalize, hang on, wait, what is the ROI on this? It's like, I don't know. I'll have to try and find out. And so the average case scenario is it doesn't work, so fine. But the best case scenario is it works, and then there's a problem, because then what happens is you have to scale it for more users because people like what you have released, and then you have to maintain it. So data gets stale, so you have to keep updating your model. Your the competitors might do something different, so you have to update things here in the product or service. So maintenance is a hidden cost that nobody really thinks about. I mean, when I mean nobody, I don't mean people in tech working on these, but general the general
Yeah.
public. And the second cost is really like the environment, because it takes a tremendous amount of energy to keep these models. I remember reading a paper from a researcher who works on the energy costs of AI, and this was a couple of years ago, and obviously these models are becoming more and more efficient. But at the time, I think it was mentioned that the amount of energy that it takes to charge your phone from a zero state all the way to a 100% battery is the same amount of energy needed to generate one image from a prompt. So
Wow.
yeah,
That's a lot.
so the next time
That's a lot. Yeah.
you're asking it for a dad joke, think again.
Yeah, yeah. That is definitely, I think, something we underestimate sometimes, the immense amount of power. And so much so that, like, I'm here in Ireland, and we've seen a stop on data centers because of the potential impact on our power grid, that
Mm.
it could cause blackouts if we build any more data centers, because we need to increase the infrastructure. And I think that's definitely a factor when you're generating those videos of
Cats doing snorkeling while on
cats doing
avocados on their
snorkeling,
shoulders.
and
Yeah.
stormtroopers giving out about Darth Vader, or Yetis
Yeah.
drinking beer, whatever. It takes an immense amount of resources to
Mm.
generate that.
Mm.
So in terms of yourself, when you're looking at AI,
Mm.
how do you kind of determine what you're going to focus on, and not, like, we've talked about the hype around AI agents. So how do you kind of avoid looking at that, the brightest shiny thing?
It's very difficult, purely because things are moving so fast. So knowing what is hype and knowing what's actually something that's worth looking into is a skill. I guess one of the things I always look for is, like, is it something that is a fundamental shift, where some understanding I had of how a piece of technology is working is completely changed? Is it a new idea that completely opens up, um, uh, you know, opportunities? Or is it something like, for example, I threw a wrapper around an existing AI model, and then all of a sudden I have this new fancy thing that everyone's excited about. It's a cool use case, don't get me wrong. But is it actually shifting the way people work with AI? If not, then that's probably a shiny object. And the other thing is, I try to focus as much as possible on the problems that matter to me, and then see how AI is evolving in those areas. So that it doesn't mean I don't keep up with what's going on. It's like FOMO is real, but I just try to focus on the problems that I need to solve on a daily basis, and that helps me focus on what kind of research and new stuff is coming out.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
that's a good
I
tip.
think
So
I
look
think
at it
we've got to.
from your look at it from the context of yourself and your company. What do
Yeah,
we
or,
need
or
to
my own
thrive?
personal interests, right? For example, like I love art and photography. So anytime a new generative model comes out in those areas, I look at what's different. Why is it different? And then another interesting trend to keep in mind is that idea going to be cross pollinated into another domain? For example, diffusion models, which are sort of the fancy name given to some of these models that produce videos and images, are now they're finding their way into text. So there's diffusion based text models coming out. So similarly, the transformer, which was a language model and the backbone for language models, was used for processing images, which is cross pollination. So there's all these very interesting switches between domains that's also something that I like to keep my eyes on.
Excellent. So if you could give our listeners, viewers, one AI superpower, what would it be?
That's a good one. One superpower. I would say the ability to ask better questions, because it's like, at least the way we interact with these models today, we ask them questions, or we ask them to solve problems for us, and oftentimes those are phrased as a question. So if you asked better questions, then that in turn should help you get more interesting answers that you can use for research, design, evaluation, whatever it be. So yeah, I'd say the ability to ask better questions.
Yeah, no, I agree. I've started using the OpenAI optimizer, so you can put in your prompt and then it will actually convert it, and I do find the responses are better. But then sometimes I get lazy and I just start typing again. So because it's a separate window, so because yeah. So once you're in the flow of so for the initial prompt, I'll go get the extended one, and then once I've trying to get a better answer, then I'll just type it, just a couple of words, to give more context. So that's the way I've been approaching it. But yeah, I agree. Like, I've seen prompts that are like 15 pages long.
Yeah. And the other side is we do a lot of Copilot adoption and AI adoption at our company, and getting people to prompt the correct way and to keep them prompting the correct way is one of the biggest challenges.
It is hard, and it varies from model to model as well, right? So you might, a prompt that works well with the Copilot type of interface may not necessarily give you the best results with, say, Claude or something else. So
Perplexity. And that's what we see. And what James is saying. So you've got people trained on the 4.0 model, and then GPT-5 comes out,
and people are
and
upset.
then the prompt
My
that
prompts
you were
don't work anymore.
Yeah, and you need to start all over again. So it's a really cool superpower to give to our guests. So that would be an interesting one, and it would make the life of us who do AI also a lot easier.
Yes, definitely, and fewer emissions, because now you're prompting less.
Exactly, first time right.
Yes, exactly. So Sairam, just to finish up, when's your book coming out?
So my book, AI for the Rest of Us, is coming out on October 30th. It should release in the US first and then worldwide very soon after. So if you are in one of those messy middle sections, or just a curious learner who wants to understand what AI is in plain English, so you know where to get the book.
Excellent.
Awesome.
Well, when the episode comes out, we will put the link to the book in the description. It's been an absolute pleasure. I think it's a really good concept of the book about, for the rest of us who are not engineers, we're not coders, but we are technical and want to understand more about AI. So it's really fascinating to me, and I'm looking forward to it coming out. And it's been a pleasure having you on, and thanks very much. Thanks everyone for listening, watching, and we will see you on the next episode.